One of the best parables I heard in the last few weeks compares the relationship between the revolting people and their ruling class during the revolution to that of a lion and his tamer, where only the lion doesn't know yet that he can actually has enough strength to stop with the whipping and the repression and actually kill his tamer. This maybe starts by the lion being wary and losing his fear of the whip, which I think maybe happened in Tunisia in the early weeks of December, when our brave comrades or brothers and sisters in Sidi Bouzid and Tela and Douz and other very quite poor regions of Tunisia started revolting and demonstrating their tens of thousands and their snipers' bullets. There's one memorable day, I can't remember the exact date, but in the town of Tela, tens of people fell to snipers' fire. They were all shot in the head, in the chest. The snipers, whom, there are many rumors that at least some of them were mercenaries, were clearly shooting to kill the people, but as well to kill the revolution at its cradle in these poor but very brave region of Tunisia. I was in London at that time, because actually I do live in London, and although I was following similar events that happened 2 years ago in what we call the mining basin of Tunisia in the south, where there was a big revolt as well, but was put down, and maybe it was a rehearsal for this revolution. But this time I knew that this was something materially different, not only in intensity but in nature. And the reason I thought so, maybe because it was clear from the amateur videos that were posted on internet and Facebook, which I opened my account early December because it was the only way to follow what is happening, the news in Tunisia. From these videos, you could see that the people lost completely their fear. Not because they thought at that moment that they were able to topple Ben Ali, but because the repression and the frustration led them to a stage where they were ready to die, and there was no way back. This is the first stage, and the second stage was, in my opinion, when the fear that the people have lost went to haunt the rulers, Ben Ali and his cronies. This happened in early January, when we started hearing news about members of his family and his friends leaving to Dubai, to Canada and other countries. And we heard as well a few days before the toppling of the president that one, maybe the most infamous of his sons-in-law, was stabbed in a market by a fishermonger who just wanted to finish with his repression. I was lucky enough to manage to take the plane and land in Tunis just the morning of the toppling of the dictator. Managed to go directly from the airport to the demo in the main avenue. Shouted all what I wanted to shout for years against the president, that I couldn't, lost my voice, was shouted for 4 hours, the famous dégage, get the hell out. And then we were attacked by the police, tear gas. There was as well some firing of bullets, and unfortunately, after battling for a couple of hours, we were dispersed. But just to hear the news, when I arrived home, just to hear the news that the president actually left the country, and just in time to celebrate with my neighbors and friends and family. What happened just after is almost as remarkable. We heard news of a counter-revolution that was prepared very early by the remnants of the presidential guards, and people started organizing in neighborhood militias. We blockaded the streets in our neighborhood, for example, blockaded all the streets, and then we managed to stop some of these people who were going around in normal civilian cars with their Kalashnikovs trying to terrorize the people. This situation maybe lasted 2 or 3 days. It was clear that this first wave of counter-revolution, which was armed, has been defeated. But then a much more subtle ways have immediately started. And the main actor here was the former Prime Minister Mohamed Tonsi, who was serving the dictator for 13 years. And just 1 or 2 days after his toppling, he discovered that he as well was a revolutionary and wanted to protect the revolution and wanted to bring back the country to work and wanted to bring back security and so on. His first government maybe consisted of almost 70% of old ministers of the same president. This was opposed by the people who started sitting in the main square in Tunis in front of the Prime Minister office. It's called Qasba Square. Much less famous than Tahrir Square, but it was clearly inspired from Tahrir Square. And here it's very interesting to see the reverberation between the two revolutions, because Egyptians learned what we did, then we learned from them, and it kept going on between the two countries. For example, just after the first day of rage in Cairo, the second, and that was already after the toppling of dictator in Tunisia, the second biggest city in Tunisia, Sfax, held their first day of rage, a term that we did not use before during the revolution. So this sitting in Al-Qasba managed to bring down this first government after a week. Here, extreme repression was used against the demonstrators. People were killed. I think between 5 and 10 people were killed. Many people were injured with triple and double fractures. We've seen scenes of extreme violence by the police, and the amazing thing that everyone agreed to compare this to the way the Israelis were repressing the Palestinians, and that's really striking comparison. And I think people understand as well that they are fighting almost against the same enemy as the Palestinians. Then Ghannouchi formed a second government of technocrats, or that's what he called technocrats. Young people who were working in France and England. Many of them are bankers. And although these people were not involved really, were not part of the old ruling party, the RCD, but they were not people who, they were not opponents to the regime, they were not revolutionaries, they never participated in any action against the regime, and they were there just to make the people take the new pill, to give a better face to the old regime. However, people did not accept them either, and they kept the sitting, they started again the sitting for weeks, and ended it with the biggest demonstration in the history of the country, with 300,000 people out of a population of 10 million, demonstrating in front of Al-Qasba Square, which led Prime Minister Ghannouchi to resign. Now, what is very interesting in his resignation speech, that he ended it with some sort of coded message, in my opinion, to the bourgeoisie to try to take the lead in the revolution, to stop the revolution from going too far or going too radical. he used a chiefly French concept, which is the silent majority, which was used by de Gaulle in '68 against the demonstrators in 1968 in France, calling on the silent majority to rise against this minority of troublemakers, this dictatorship of the Al-Qasba protesters. And what is amazing that the silent majority has been silent for 50 years without any problems, and they could not be silent for another month. And I tell you, they should have kept quiet, because then, just 2 days after they started their own sitting in the most, in the richest area of Tunis, the new Prime Minister, Beji Caid announced in July the election of a new constitutional assembly. They cheered as well, although this was the main ask from the protesters of Al-Qasba. So the protesters of what we call Al-Manza said, we actually have the same demands, so why do you want to protest in a different area or have your own? It is clearly sectarian, it is clearly their only problem was not with the demands at this point of the other protesters, but potentially with their class origins, because they were mainly working class, many of them urban poor or peasants or people from the poorest areas of Tunisia. How long do I have?
You have about 3 minutes.
3 minutes, thank you. So, right now, the current Prime Minister, who's really, the old regime has had to look into the corners of their drawers to find someone who's suitable, because this guy has retired from politics 30 years ago. So he was presented as an opponent to whom? To President Bourguiba, the old president. Apparently they had some sort of disagreement. We still don't know how deep the disagreement was. We know that he resigned. And then he's presented to the people as the opponent who can carry on the revolution. In Tunisia they say this is a revolution of the youth, although I don't agree with that 100%. But it's remarkable that the same people who say this have chosen someone who's 84 years old to be the Prime Minister. Anyway, he did score a few points, maybe under extreme pressure. The Constitutional Assembly will be voted for in July. We still don't know how, what are the modalities, so that's a big question. The Interior Minister, one day after the storming of the state security in Egypt, which I would call their Bastille Day, just one day after that, and 2 days before a scheduled demonstration in Tunisia in front of the Interior Minister, who's the place for our secret police, the Interior Minister decided to give it up without a fight, because I thought he did not want us to see the same images that came out of Egypt, of torture chambers, and maybe because it's much worse. So they said that they have dissolved the secret police or the political police. However, they said there are only 200 people, which no one can believe, because we all know everywhere we walk in Tunisia, we can identify the political police. They are so bad, such bad actors and very bad spies, to be honest. So they cannot be just 200. So it is just a way, maybe, to give up one step, but the people have not accepted that, and they want more than that. Few days ago, I think three days ago, this time the court has officially dissolved the old ruling party, the RCD. And there were big celebrations. I think on Friday, in one of the major towns in the south of Tunisia, they have carried funerals of the old party. And I can tell you, there were lots of celebrations during this funeral. It was very special. So what I would like to say, comrades, there are many things that are happening, many things that are going on with Egypt, with Libya, with Yemen, with Bahrain, Oman. I feel that we did not have the time to celebrate what happened in Tunisia. I think what happened is extremely important. Let's remember how brutal was the regime of Ben Ali and how brave our friends and comrades in Tunisia were when they overthrew him.